Exercise 1, Creating Animated Sprites. To begin this, we're going to go ahead and create a new sprite. I'm going to call it Sprite Animated. Now in here, we're going to be adding some additional frames to this sprite. Each frame, as you know, adds an additional layer to the sprite, allowing us to show multiple images. So in this, I'm going to click the little plus button here, and you'll notice that it added an additional frame here. So I'll click it one more time. The highlighted in green indicates this is the currently selected sprite, and the sprite would show down here, but there's nothing different between them. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to add a different look to the sprite, so click on Edit Image. This will bring up the editor, and you'll notice up here we have the same frames of the sprite. I'll click on the first one, and I'm just going to choose a brush, in this case the pencil brush, and then I'm going to choose a color. Let's just use red, and I will draw something here in the editor. I'm just going to draw a simple bat-looking character with its wings in the up position. I'm going to then go to the next frame, draw a similar one, but this time I'll put its wings in a straight across position, and I'll go to the last frame and draw it in the down position. At this point, there's a play option here where I can play through the sprite, and it will cycle through each of these frames, and then once it gets to the end, it'll go back to the beginning. So let me press the play, and there's the animation. It's pretty poor, but I'm not much of an artist. But if you are, you can use this editor to create a very simple animated sprite. For those of you who are not artists like myself, it's easier to use pre-created animated images for this. So what we're going to do is I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'm going to call this Sprite Spider. And I'm going to load images from an external resource. In the sprite, click the Import button. We'll then go to the Resources folder for this week, week 3. Go to the Exercise Resources folder, and you'll find a folder called Spider Images. Open that, and here is a series of different images that we're going to import. What you'll do is you'll select the first image in the list, hold the Shift key down, move to the last image, and this will select all of the images. The reason I do it this way is because this is the first image in the animated sprite, and this is the last image. GameMaker will pull them in and create a frame in the order that they're selected. Once you're done, click Open. This will have created each of the frames of the image for us. If I scroll across here, you'll see that there's a series more off to the right. In this case, there's a total of 16 frames. It shows it up there. It says currently I've selected the 0 frame, or excuse me, I have no frame selected. If I click here, I select the first frame. I'll go over here and I'll select the 8th frame. You'll notice that the image changes as I move through and select the different frame. I can press the play button right now, and it will animate the image for us to show us what it's going to look like. Okay. That's the easiest type of image to load. We're going to make some slight modifications to this though, because you notice there's this gray background around it, and we don't typically want that in our images. We'd much rather them to be a plain invisible background. So we're going to click Edit Image. Here in the editor, we're going to use a tool called the Magic Wand. What the magic wand does is it'll figure out where the outline of an image is and select that for us. So what I do is I select the magic wand, go into the gray area and click, and this will create this marquee around the image, and you'll notice it's around the image in the interior as well. If I press the delete key now, it'll remove the gray background, creating the checkerboard background that indicates the invisible part. This was where the background will show through. I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to do this to each of the images in the sprite. So I'll just select the next image, make sure the magic wand is selected, click, and press delete. I'll continue doing this for each of the 16 images. Once I'm done, I'm going to press the play button, and we still should have the same look to our animated sprite. The last way to create an animated sprite, which is by far the easiest, is importing an animated GIF. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to create a new sprite, and I'm going to call this sprite UFO. Click the import button. We'll go back to our exercise resources folder, and in here is a file called UFO GIF. This is an animated GIF. These are available on the web in many different forms. So I'll click open. This will do the same thing as the previous one did. It'll open each frame of the animation as a different frame in our sprite editor. If I click the play button, it will play the image for us. In this case, I'm going to go back to edit, and I'm going to delete all the white around each of the images. Okay, at this point you've learned how to create different animated sprites. We're going to need a couple more sprites for these exercises, so look in your exercise document and create them now. You also need to create some objects. I'm going to do that at this time. Go ahead and pause the video until you're done. Exercise 2, better keyboard controls. Something you might have noticed in the earlier exercise with the Vacuum Marauders Part 1 is that the keyboard controls are a little clunky. So we're going to be showing you a different way of moving the character in this particular version of Vacuum Marauders. It's a little easier. So go ahead to the UFO object that you've created. And what you're going to do is add in a key down left event. In the actions window, add a new action. It's called jump to point. The window. And in here you're going to put an X value of -5 and a Y value of 0. Check relative. So what this is going to do is every time you press the left key, it's going to pick up the object and it's going to move it 5 pixels in the -5 pixel direction, which is to the left on the screen. So each game step, the ship will move 5 pixels to the left. It won't move any in the Y direction. Okay, go ahead and create the events for the key down right, key down up, and key down down. The instructions are in your exercise guide. Pause the video now and continue it when you're done. Now Now that you're done adding your key events, go ahead and add the UFO object to the game room. And then run the game. If I press the keys now, you'll notice that the ship moves up, down, left, and right. You should also notice I didn't need a no key event here to stop it when it was moving, or when I let go of the keys. So this is an added benefit of this type of movement. Another benefit is if I press an up key and the left key at the same time, the ship will move diagonally. It'll do this in all directions. Now what we need to do is we need to add a capability to keep the object in the room. So I'll close the running game here, and I'll close the room. Go back to our object UFO. To keep it on the game screen is very easy. In this case, we're going to be adding an event, another event called intersect boundary, which is the edge of the screen. We're going to be adding a jump to action. In this case, we're going to be typing the word X previous in the X position. This is a built-in variable. We're not going to press relative in this case. And we'll put Y previous in the Y. What these built-in variables are is they hold the value of where the ship, or in this case the UFO, was in the previous game step. So this is a very easy way to tell the ship to stay within the game screen. Okay, I'm going to run the game again. And I should be able to move around the game screen, but if I touch a side of the window, UFO will stop. Exercise 3, mouse controls. Now this type of game is perfect for us to use the mouse instead of the keyboard as a game control. So we're going to be adding in the capability to use the mouse to control the UFO. So in the UFO object, we'll add an event, the step event, and then the sub-step. We're going to still use the jump to point action. In this case, we're going to be using a built-in variable called mouse underscore X for the X. So mouse underscore X is a built-in variable. It gives us the current position, X position of the mouse. And then for Y, we will type in mouse Y. That's it. That's all you have to do. We will not need to put in anything to keep it within the game screen. We won't have to do any other pieces to this. So this makes it a very, very simple method of moving the ship around the screen. I'll go ahead and I'll press the play button. And I'll start moving the ship around the screen. You'll notice if I go to the edges, it does not run off. But you may notice one odd thing here. The mouse cursor, in this case, is not hovering over the UFO itself. This is because I made a mistake when I put together the sprite for this. I did not center the sprite. So this is a good indicator that you need to fix something here when things don't look right. This is a logical error, as you had learned in your previous exercises. So I'll go ahead and I'll fix this now. Go back to my UFO sprite and choose the middle center position. I'll rerun the game. And now the mouse cursor will be in the middle of the UFO. Exercise 4, creating and adding sounds. As you already know, sound effects are quite an important part of video games. So I'm going to show you how to create some simple ones on your own. You'll be doing this for the game Vacuum Marauders 2. We'll be using GameMaker 2 for this. You're going to be using a tool. It's located in the resource folder under week 3. It's called Sound Effects Generator. That's the folder, so open it. And then in this folder, you'll be opening an executable file called sfxr.exe. So go ahead and open it. This will be the window that opens. This is a very simple tool to use. You can go ahead and simply use what's called the generator to create a sound effect. I'm going to go ahead and click on a few of these. When you click on these, it auto-generates a sound effect for you. The effect itself is shown here, all the settings for this. You can actually adjust these settings by clicking in these areas. It'll give a different sound effect. If you like the sound effect, you can click this button here, the export wave function. It's going to come up and ask you what to name the file. This is very non-intuitive how to use this here. You just have to start typing. I'm going to call this sound effect 1. And then I'm going to press the enter key. Now the sound has been saved. If I go back to the folder where we ran this from, there'll be a new file created, in this case, sound effect 1.wave. You can create as many sound effects as you need for your game. Just remember that once you have created a sound, if you click any one of these other ones here, the sound that you had before is gone, and it is random every time you click these. So you may have to play with this a little bit before you get the actual sound you want. Okay, for this exercise, you're just going to need one sound. So you can either use the sound that you've already exported or create a new one. Name that file Arcade. Now, simple sound effects are nice for certain parts of the game, but it'd be nice to have some background ambient music. So for this particular exercise, we're going to be going to the web, and we're going to be using a tool called Beatbox. So open your web browser, and then type in at the top www.beepbox.co. Press enter, and this will come up with a screen that shows a line moving across the screen. This is an indicator showing you how the sound effect, or excuse me, in this case the music, is going to be played. To create your music, it's really simple here. All you have to do is choose a spot on the screen, click it, and then when the white line passes that spot, it will create the sound. I'll add another one here, and a few more. Go ahead and pause this at this point. You'll see it's really easy to make a simple background set of music. This particular tool isn't very powerful, but it can give you something simple to work with. There are instructions for how to use this located further down the web page, so if you move down here, it'll give you better instructions on how to use this. Okay, next we're going to be adding some sound effects to our game. Actually, first, let's go back. And I'm going to show you how to export this. You can just click the export button here. And you can save it to different types of files. I'll call this a WAV file. And it will save it to our downloads folder. Alright, now we'll go ahead and add sound to the game. So let me go back to the assignment here. First you have to create the sound, so I'll right click on the sound file folder, click create sound. Go ahead and I'm going to give this the name Sound Arcade, and we're going to be using the sound effect from our first tool that we used. You have to click on this little triple dot over here to choose the sound effect. I'll need to go to the folder where we saved it. This happens to be the sound effects generator folder. That's where it always saves the sounds. I'll choose Arcade Wave. I'll click open. So that's it. We've actually created the sound for the game, but now we need to actually put the sound into the game so that it'll play. So in this case, I'm going to use the spider object for the game. Okay, before you add the sound to the spider object, we need to have the spider object actually doing something. So I want you to add the needed actions to move this spider left and right on the screen and a reversing direction when it touches the sides. I'm going to go ahead and do this now. Alright, so once you have gotten to this point, we're going to be adding a play audio command. We'll place this under the reverse direction. Under where it says sound, you'll choose the sound arcade. We don't want it to loop, we just want it to play once. And the ship has touched, or the spider has touched the side of the room. Once you're done here, open room 0, add a couple of spider objects to the room. And then we'll play the game. And the sound should happen whenever the spider touches the edge of the room. Exercise 5, Parenting Objects. Alright, parenting is an incredibly powerful tool in GameMaker. It allows us to give actions and events to other objects in the game from other objects. So for instance, in this case, we have a spider object which has two events in it, create and intersect boundary. If I open the wasp object, it has no events or actions in it. What I'm going to do here is I'm going to be choosing what's known as the parent option here. And I'm going to select the spider as the parent of this object. By doing this, what it's telling the wasp is use the same events that are in the spider object. So instead of me having to recreate these events and actions in the wasp, I can just set it up as the parent. I'm going to go ahead and open room 0 here again, and I'm going to remove the spider objects from the room. And I'm going to put the one wasp in the room, and I'm going to run it. So you should notice that the wasp started moving as soon as it was placed in the room, and it bounced and it had the sound effect. The same events and actions that were in the spider object. You also noticed I didn't have the spider object even in the room. It doesn't need to be in the room in order for the parenting to work. You should remember back to the first Vacuum Marauders, where you had to have the two different enemy objects, and you had to put events and actions in both of those. Here, if you were to use parenting, you could have saved yourself some time. There are some benefits to parenting. You can have these objects known as the child objects that can use the events and actions of the parent, but also have their own events and actions that are separate from the parent, so it can give it a slightly different feel. And there are some other capabilities. We're not going to be going into all the details of that in this course, but if you look through the documentation for GameMaker, you can learn more on this subject. Exercise 6, Paths. Paths in GameMaker are a way of giving an object a particular route to follow on the game screen. Go ahead and start off by creating a path. This will bring up the new path in our game window. I'm going to go ahead and call this one Path Swirl. So to begin with, we're going to click on this option called Snap to Grid. This will make sure that our pointer is being specifically placed at 32 by 32 pixels within the game grid. This just makes it easier for us to get the correct values. You'll notice that it says snap up here of 32 and 32. You can change those if you need to. So it says let's go ahead and we're just going to click anywhere in the game window to give it a starting position. Alright, so in this particular example, I've clicked on the game grid. It's at the x equals 288 and the y equals 192 position. You can actually see that over on the left side here. What we're going to do next is we're just going to go ahead and click at another point on the screen. And you'll notice that a line is created between these 2 points. Now this was the first point created and this is the second point created. What's going to happen is the object will start at this position and then move down to this position. You can continue adding points to this path. We'll just add one here, and one here. So now we have a path that the object, when it starts on the path, will move from here to here, to here, to here, to here. The order of those is maintained over here on the left-hand side. We can change this from these straight lines here, because that might look a little bit odd. We can smooth them out a little bit by clicking the smooth curve, so it'll create this kind of a swirling effect to the enemy. So now we're done creating the path, so we can go ahead and close this. So I'm going to go ahead into the wasp object, open it up again. Now in this case, we don't want the wasp to continue having the same movement pattern as the spider, so I'm going to remove it as a parent. So I'll click here under the parent option and then choose none. So now there is no parent for the wasp object. I'll then go ahead and add a create event into the wasp. And in here, we're going to have a new action. It's a path action. We're going to have a start following path action. We'll choose the path swirl. I'll set the speed. This is in pixels per second. I'll make that 5 pixels per second. And then we want to set it to loop. So this is the on end. So when the path is ended, I want it to loop. And you'll notice here in this particular area, it says something a little different than what it says over here. This is an internal GameMaker function parameter versus what makes it easier for the game developer using drag and drop. So this might be just a little bit confusing. Okay, relative, I'm going to go ahead and leave at false. to indicate. I've chosen relative here because had I chosen true, each of the WASP objects would pile on top of each other and start in the exact position as shown in the path. So I'm going to go back to the path for just a moment and show you what I'm talking about. If I chose true, each WASP would move to the 288x 192y position and start moving this path here. We don't want that. We want them to start at their exact position in the room. So we choose false here. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to run the game. And we'll watch the WASP. I've added a second one. And they should start moving down the screen in this kind of a swirl path. Go ahead and I'll close this. Now, with a path, sometimes this will take the object outside the left and right sides of the screen. You may want it to be destroyed when it moves out the left or right, but typically with paths, you want it to continue working its way down the screen, even if it's moved off this left or right side of the screen. So what we're going to do is, to create that effect, we'll only delete the WASP when it moves off the bottom of the screen. So I'm going to add a new event, an other outside room event. In this case, I only want it to be deleted when it goes off the bottom of the screen, so this is a question. So we'll bring in an if variable, in this case the y variable. We'll ask if it's greater than, I'm going to type in a built-in variable here called room underscore height. This shows me how tall the room is, so we'll get the bottom position of the room. If we're greater than that, which means we've moved off the bottom of the screen, we're going to go ahead and destroy the instance. Exercise 7, timelines. A timeline is a way of having things happen in your game at specific time points. We're going to be doing this with the spider and wasp objects, having them come in at different times in the game to make it a little more interesting for the player. So first off, we'll open the game room, and I'm going to delete the wasps out of the room. Go ahead and close the room up here. I'm going to go to timelines, create a new timeline, and you'll see this screen here. Okay, each point in time that we're going to be placing items in the game room or doing actions in the game room is known as a moment. So to add a moment, you click on the add button. This will open up an actions window. This action window is exactly like the action windows that are used in the objects under their different events. So what we're going to do here is we're going to go ahead and create some spider objects. So go ahead and add a create instance action to this moment. I'll choose the spider object. I'm going to place this at the 100 position in the room. So this will be exactly at 100 pixels to the right and 100 pixels down. So if I were to run the game right now, a spider would appear at this exact position in the room and then begin its movement. Now, typically, with the timeline, you don't want it to start immediately when the game begins. You want to give the player a moment to gather themselves. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to change the time that this comes in. The 0 indicates it would start immediately when the game starts. So I'm going to change this. I'm going to right-click on the moment here, click Change Moment. It will highlight the 0, so I'm going to make it 60. So this will be 60 steps into the game, or about 2 seconds into the game, it will begin to create this instance. Now, in order to see this happen, we have to add the timeline into the game somehow. So we have to have some object that's going to actually start the timeline. In this case, we'll use the UFO object. So open the UFO object, and we're going to add a create event. And in this, we need to have an action to start the timeline. So we'll search for the timeline actions. So we need a set instance timeline. Over here, I'll choose the timeline. I'd forgotten to give the timeline a name, so it gave it the default name of timeline 0. So I'll choose timeline 0 here. And I will leave the options as they are alone. Okay, so make sure that all the WASP and SlutBiter instances are out of the room, which I believe we've already done. They are. I'll run the game, and we should have 2 seconds into the game. A spider object should be created. And there it is. Okay, we're going to go back to the timeline. So I'm going to close the room here. Open the timeline. And we're going to add another moment into this timeline. So I've created a new timeline moment. I'm going to change the time here to 90. So we'll have after 2 seconds and then after 3 seconds, we'll have the next action happen. And in this particular case, I'm going to create some WASPs. So I'll add a create instance, WASP, at the 200 by 200 position. You can go ahead and create the other actions here, as shown in the exercise guide. Okay, once you're done, you can go ahead and run the game. So we should have the spider created. A second later, we should have 3 WASP objects created. Exercise 8, alarms. Alarms are used in GameMaker in order to make things happen at particular points of time within the game. These are very similar to timelines, but these are actually more powerful. Let's say, for instance, you only want the player to shoot a missile every second, rather than being able to shoot a missile as fast as they can while pressing the spacebar or clicking a mouse button. We're going to go ahead and use an alarm for this. First, start off by opening the missile object and adding in the events and actions to make it move upward on the screen when it's created and destroyed when it leaves the room. You can go ahead and pause the game while you do this. Okay, once you're done with the missile object, go ahead and open the UFO object. And in the create event, you're going to be adding a variable, user created variable here. And we're going to be naming it missile underscore fired. And we'll set it to an initial value of 0. This variable is going to be used to indicate whether the missile has been fired or not. 0 indicates the missile has not been fired. Okay, now we're going to add in a event. It's going to be the mouse left down event. So this will be when I'm pressing the left mouse button. here, we're going to be adding a few commands. We're going to be doing an if variable to check the missile fired variable that we created earlier. We'll check to see if it's equal to 0. So if the missile has not been fired, we'll create a missile object relative to the UFO. So now we've created it, and now we have to remember that we have fired a missile. So we need to change the variable missile fired. We'll give it a different value, in this case 1, indicating the missile has been fired. Alright, so ultimately we're going to have to change this back to a 0 to say that we can fire a missile again. So we want to do this after 1 game second. So to do this, we'll use an alarm. So we're going to be using this thing called set alarm countdown. We're going to be using alarm 0, but there are multiple alarms. In this case, there are a total of 12 that you can use. We'll just choose 0, and we'll leave the countdown value to vault at 30. So after 30 game steps, we want something to happen. That something that happens is an event. So we need to go back to add event, choose alarm, and then the submenu alarm 0. Here we want our missile fired variable to change back to 0 so that a missile can be fired again. So we'll add that variable over here, type in missile fired, and it'll set it back to 0. If I run the game now, and I press the mouse button, I can keep clicking it as fast as I want, but the missile's only fired every second.